Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and it is the 24th of October. We are just way deep in Connected Educator Month, and we have two really fun guests tonight. We're going to have a conversation with Lucy Gray and Stephen Anderson. Welcome to both of you. I'm glad they're the highlight of your day, Peggy. They've really been fun for me. And there's a connection between the two of you that you probably don't know, but we'll get to it in a minute. Maybe first you can tell me what your connections are. But before we go there, there's lots going on with Connected Educator Month. There's the Ed Connector program, quite cool. There are the book clubs. There's the badge of the day, and those who stick around to the end will get a badge code you can use to get to the badge. And for the stalwart group that's here live, click on the star to the left of the map and click on the map. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Thanks, Peggy. I'm in very cold North Carolina right now. Anybody else in a cold front? 90 degrees. That is cold for you, Benny. And we were supposed to have broken a record yesterday. Anyway, thanks for joining us live. We'll have some fun tonight. Okay, so here's my connection between the two of you. So Lucy, you and I have this history of co-chairing the Global Education Conference and now the STEM conference, which is not going to be known as STEMX anymore, I don't think, but the STEM whatever conference. So I called Stephen Anderson one day and said, hey, how do we collaborate? And Stephen, do you remember kind of coming up with the idea of the School Leadership Summit in that phone call?
I do remember us talking about that, yeah. That's one of my passions is the need to educate administrators. So it kind of grew out of that conversation that you and I had.
Yeah, I should go back. I don't remember any other details, but I'm quite sure that we came up with some other things at the time. I would imagine there are some gems in my notes from that call. Yeah, 6 degrees. I think it's 1 degree here. Okay, so the way that we do this is that we give you both a chance to kind of give a 5-minute overview of your background, what you do and how you got to doing what you do. And we'll get to your passions a little bit later. But right now it's more of kind of a chance for people to get to know who you are. So, yeah, the 5-minute bio. So, Lucy, can we start with you?
Sure. I was going to actually pick on Stephen and tell him he had to go first, but since you called on me, I will. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and see you, Steve and Steve. I'm Lucy Gray, and I'm here in Northbrook, Illinois. I am in between lots of busy things going on today. It seems to be Connected Parent Day. My daughter's in a swim meet at our high school. Ryan Breitag is the tech director there, if you guys know Ryan. And she's in a swim meet right now, and then parents can go swimming, race against their kids tonight afterwards. So I'm going to race out of here at 7:30 and hopefully catch my husband splashing around with the swim team. So anyway, who am I? Where have I come from? I started my career in Chicago Public Schools. I taught there for 8 years before my first child was born, primary grades mostly, and then I got a master's degree in educational technology while I was staying home for a couple of years with Julia, who's now 15. And I was inspired by an article I read in the paper about an area tech coordinator at the time named Helen Hoffenberg. She worked in Chicago Public Schools. And I said, I want to be like her when I grow up. And hence I went and got this degree from National Louis University where Helen had gone. Helen now works for Apple. I've known her for a long time now, and she's been kind of a mentor to me. So that's kind of where it all started. After I finished, during this time, I kind of dropped into a job at the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools, which really kind of catapulted me to do lots of interesting things. If you don't know the lab schools, it's a school that John Dewey started over 100 years ago. It's a great place, independent school, large independent school on the University of Chicago campus. And the great thing about lab is that it gives teachers a lot of autonomy. What you do is up to you, I mean, to a certain extent, and you can really pursue your passions and work with kids in interesting ways. So I was there for 7 years teaching middle school computer science, and I learned a lot about computer science in general from my colleagues there, who I still think really know what they're doing in this field with, from second grade through high school with computer science. And I decided that I wanted more leadership opportunities, and I jumped at the chance to work with another Apple Distinguished Educator by the name of Nicole Pinkard. And by the way, in about 2005, I became an ADE, which really changed my life. Connected me to a lot of amazing people and inspired me to think big. Nicole is one of those think big kind of people, and she started something called the Digital Youth Network, which is continuing on now at DePaul University, and she's been the person behind U Media, which is this library space at the Chicago Public Libraries that's gotten a lot of attention. Anyway, I went to work for Nicole over at another part of the University of Chicago for 2 years until the funding ran out, and I worked with charter schools as a technology coach, basically. I stayed another year at another U of C entity after that called the Center for Elementary Math and Science Education, otherwise known as the Everyday Math People, and continued to consult with them for a year after I left U of C. We moved to the suburbs, and that's when of Chicago, and that's when I really began kind of leveraging the connections and the people the connections and the opportunities that I had stumbled in as a teacher. So for the past 3 years, I've been doing a number of things, most notably our Global Education Conference, which is really, I think, probably the thing I'm most passionate about. And if you're not familiar with that, we can talk about it later. But it's been just an amazing event and an amazing experience, and fabulous to work with you, Steve. And I've worked for companies and for schools and coaching situations and that sort of thing. And really, I love what I do. And I get to meet some really interesting people, pick up tips and tricks and ideas from the amazing people that I get to work with every place I go. And it's been kind of like I've been in training for something, I kind of think. So right now, I'm actually, and who knows what will happen with this. I'm not counting my eggs before they're hatching, but I'm interviewing for a job that I think is potentially transformative, and I'll be able to apply all that knowledge. So I'm really excited about that. I wasn't looking for another job, another formal kind of job, but it's looking, I don't know, it's making me kind of think about how would I take all this knowledge that I've accrued, particularly in the last 3 years, and use it to really be impacting schools a little bit more directly, I guess. So that's it in a nutshell. Anything else I need to babble about, Steve?
Yes. Okay. So Lucy, what is benign neglect?
Benign neglect. This is what I've learned. So we have two phrases we pass around. One is the one that I'm most passionate about is professional generosity. I believe that the more you give back to people, the more comes back to you and expands your horizons and just benefits everyone for the most part. So I believe that it's our obligation as professionals to support each other. Sometimes it's hard to support people that you're not crazy about, but generally it's our obligation to not keep everything that we know secret, I guess, so that other people can learn from us or from each other and morph on that and turn it into even better stuff. benign neglect has been a big concept behind managing our lives, I think, to a certain extent. And that's, it's about not empowering people to, it's about empowering people to think for themselves. And in some cases, particularly with the Global Education Conference, I don't think we've neglected anybody, but we want people to kind of take control of their presentations and promoting their presentations and figuring out how to do things so that they develop some confidence and feel like they've actually learned something themselves. So that's part of it. But benign neglect is really kind of letting go and letting people figure things out. And if something needs to be dealt with, you deal with it. But I've learned that from you, Steve.
You know, I'm thinking of, you couldn't hear me laughing. I tried to put the video on so you could see that I was smiling. It's such a touchstone phrase for me, right? And I don't think I've ever really talked about where it came from, but it came from when I led group tours for 5 years. And knowing you just can't solve every problem for everybody. And so it was this idea that you just didn't allow yourself to get flustered at the moment, and you allowed people to kind of solve their own problems. And often if you went away, they solved their problems better than you could have. But I like how you drilled down on that, because I love what we do in those conferences of empowering people by asking them to prepare and asking them to take the training and calendaring themselves and all of that. Okay, I have this idea.
I'll add one thing to that too. There's nothing more satisfying than at the end of our conferences, and we have this, our closing party, and people come forward and they say what the experience has been like for them. I never ever would have predicted the kind of responses that we've gotten, ranging from somebody the first year crying in Richard Close's presentations about Africa in his stories, to people saying, I was really nervous about this, about presenting a webinar on my own and learning all the nuances of it, and it's changed my life. Or to someone like Marcy from Connecticut, who was up, I think, for 5 days straight one year, taking everything in. She was a retired educator, and she couldn't get enough. And so it's exciting when I see people getting excited and feeling like they're more connected, hence Connected Educator Month. There's the plug. There's nothing more exciting for me, and some people have said to me that I'm a connector, and I haven't read Malcolm Gladwell's book. I know that I should read that. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's not something that I've deliberately done. I just I enjoy seeing people play off of each other and learn from each other and get excited about things together. And I very often I can see pieces of the puzzle, like, oh, you need to know that person or this person. And I like it when that synergy happens. So just a couple other thoughts.
So listen to me, there are 400 or so sessions for the Global Education Conference, and this is typically practitioners teaching other practitioners. I had an email exchange yesterday with someone where I realized that's a very different model. In this person's particular world, the idea was, how do you get the highest quality instructor? And I wish I can remember what the conversation was. Oh, I read an article today that talked about, it was from Star Trek. It was an episode of Star Trek where they're coming back from some big intergalactic conference, and they're talking about how so-and-so bored them with his lecture. And the woman said, so our picture of the future is that people are still lecturing? And I thought, isn't that interesting? How unique do you think the format has been for the Global Education Conference? And is it kind of here to stay?
I actually think we're just starting, because I think so many people are not aware of what we're doing. But I think in EdTech in general, the kind of stuff that gets us excited, it's not really, EdTech is the basis of it, but it's all really about teaching and learning and growing. But the kind of epiphanies we all in this room have had over the last few years, I don't think have reached the critical mass yet. I don't think that the average person out there has necessarily, had the kind of experiences where we've just gone, aha, or this is exciting. And so I think there's still a lot of people to reach. The other thing that is a little bit of a downer is that I don't think everybody's as excited about this kind of stuff as we are. And we forget that really easy. It's really easy to forget that. I had a friend who's a college classmate say to me, she's a great second grade teacher in Milwaukee, and she said around ed tech in general, she's like, I know I should want to get more involved. I know I should go to conferences. I know I should do all this, but I don't have the time sometimes, and my colleagues make me feel bad that I'm not more capable in this area. And I don't think people do it intentionally. I think it's just because people are running circles around her with whatever they do that it's made her feel a little bit insecure. That said, I've been giving her like a few tips and tricks, and other people have too, with some new iPad minis in her classroom, and all of a sudden she's taking off with them and going crazy. So she found her thing, right? But I don't think everybody has found their thing to get excited about yet, and we have to keep that in mind as we go around lecturing people about how great this all is.
Did you and I meet at a Classroom 2.0 event in Chicago? Was that the first time we had met?
I think so. Yeah, that was when I was working for the U of C charter schools. That was my gig after lab, and that was fun. We had, I don't know, 40, 50 people there, and then we went over to the studio that they had built for the Digital Youth Network place. That was where the second day was, I think. Yeah, I think so. I think that was. I honestly can't remember. I just have always known you, Steve.
Oh, wait a minute. Peggy, did you and I meet in Phoenix at a Classroom 2.0 event? I think we did. Isn't that funny? We'll let Peggy let us know. Okay, Stephen, your turn. Tell us about yourself and who you are and how you got there.
Well, so I started out as a middle school math and science teacher, and actually it started long before that. I knew pretty early on. My father is an educator. Educators are all throughout our family, so I knew I was going to be a teacher of some kind. I always thought through high school I would be a high school band director. So I've been playing tuba since I was 11 years old, and thought that that's what I was going to do. I thought I was going to go to college and be a band director, and I went to a wonderful university, Western Carolina University, with probably one of the top marching bands in the country, and realized that maybe being a band director wasn't for me. So then I said, oh, well, I'll just switch to elementary ed. So for about 2.5 years, I was an elementary ed major. I thought that that's what I was going to do with my life. I just thought, hey, I could go teach kindergarten. That would be pretty cool, and surely that could be easy. It's playing and drawing and painting and everything. Sure, that would be great. So when it came time to do student teaching, I lasted 1 day in a kindergarten classroom and said, nope, not for me. Knew I still wanted to be a teacher, and went to and changed majors and went to middle grades. And middle grades is really, I think, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are really the best years to teach. And I know elementary teachers will argue with me, high school teachers will argue with me, but I really think those middle years are the best years, because you really see kids go through a large amount of development, and a lot of the things that they do in middle school, a lot of those things that they learn really help them transition on and be successful in high school. And I really loved that. I loved teaching math. I loved teaching science even more. It was something that I found a pretty early passion for. But in my first year of teaching, I took a class on how to use clickers in the classroom. So it was a 2-day class. We learned all about how to use the clicker system. And it was really the presenter presented it in a way that, oh, well, you can create a test, and then the system will grade the test for you. It was very summative. And so I went home, I took my system home that day and figured out, hey, I could do this for figuring out how well I was teaching by just quickly using some of the tools that were in there. And so I came back the next day, and as we were going through, as we were learning more summative ways to do things, I said, well, what if we did it before the test? What if we used the clickers before the test? And it was really kind of that interaction where I kind of went home and learned the technology on my own, that I found a kind of a passion for using technology in the classroom. My school that I was teaching at the time had an old interactive whiteboard that was sitting in the back of the media center. Nobody used it. Nobody knew how to connect it. Wasn't even sure that it even worked. So I rolled it down to my classroom just to figure it out, and wound up using it in my classroom for several years, and even to one point where the school had it mounted in my classroom permanently. So that was really kind of solidified for me that technology can have a huge impact. Well, this whole time I was working with adults and teaching the other teachers in my building, and somebody from the district came to teach us something, and he said, why don't you go do this for a job? And I said, you can do this for a job? Like, there's a real degree for that? And he said, yeah. So I went to East Carolina University and got my master's in instructional technology, and I've kind of never looked back from there. I went and moved to the district level, and now I'm a director of instructional technology for the fourth largest district in North Carolina. So I have 81 schools, 54,000 students that I take care of, myself and my staff, and we work every day to make sure kids have everything that they need, and that their teachers have everything that they need to teach successfully using technology. Outside of that, I work with a lot of schools and districts all around the country on social media policy integration. In fact, on Sunday, I'm getting ready to travel to Doha, Qatar, or Doha, Qatar, out in the Middle East to attend a conference there on figuring out how we can be better connected. So one of the things myself and my buddy Tom Whitby are going to do is talk to educators that are attending there from around the world on this idea of connectedness, on why aren't there more people that are connected. In fact, before this, I was doing our EdChat radio show, and Tom and I were talking about the number of educators, and so he estimates there are, on a good day, 500,000 connected educators out of 7.2, and he says that's a very general, just number crunching observation. There's no real kind of, it's just an estimate. And even if 500,000 is being generous, that's still way not enough. And so what we want to look at is how can we tap into what's happening in other parts of the world, and what can us in the U.S. do to better connect to teachers in other parts of the world. Because really, like what Vicki Davis talks about, the world is flat. I mean, we really have some opportunities to show kids that the world is beyond their classroom, that their world is really beyond the city limits in which they live, that there's a whole huge, great place of learning that takes place all across the globe. And it's really fascinating, too, some of the other things we'll hear at this conference. They give these awards every year for really true innovations in teaching. And so you just hear these stories from other people. There will be people there from Syria who are working with kids in refugee camps, trying to provide some sense of normalcy for kids who all they've known for years is war. And so in talking to these people, I mean, it's really humbling to talk to somebody who teaches or who lives in a refugee camp, who tries to teach kids in that situation. And so what can we do as educators who are connected? How can we tap into that? How can we provide those kids a better education? What can we do? Because it's like Lucy said, I really think it is our obligation to share. I really think we do have an obligation to share. So I'm like you, Lucy. I think of myself as a connector and trying to get people to talk to each other and connect to each other and learn from each other. And if there's a way that we can tap into the greater good and make people see that there are these really cool things that are happening around the globe, and that it is possible to teach kids no matter what their situation is, we really have a lot to learn from that. So it's stuff like that I get to do that I'm really, really lucky, a lot of the things that I've been able to do and fortunate enough to do. But still my passion is working with teachers, and I've kind of, since my staff does a lot of that, I've kind of shifted my focus in working with administrators. So for so long, administrators have been left behind. We spend a great deal of time and money trying to get teachers up to speed, which is smart because ideally they are the ones teaching kids, but with more of a push on evaluations and really the principal and the administrator is the instructional leader in your building. I love how Joe Mazza talks about himself when he's a principal of an elementary school. He doesn't use the word principal. He's the lead learner in his school. And it's so true. But for so long, administrators were left behind when it came to any type of professional development. And so what I've tried to do is work with administrators in my district and in other places to get them to understand, one, how does technology work in their lives? How can they be better users of technology? But two, one of the biggest things we see is how do you identify what good technology integration looks like and what bad integration technology looks like? And then how do you coach a teacher? So we've kind of taken that three-prong approach and turned it into a year-long PD series for our administrators to go through. So we aligned it with the ISTE NETs, and then we're working with them to help them see, hey, when you walk into a classroom, you should be able to identify what those good teachers are doing with technology and what those good teachers may have weaknesses in their pedagogy when it comes to technology. And then it's not about telling them that they're right or wrong, but it's how do you coach that teacher? How do you say to that teacher, okay, here's what I saw and here's how you can make it better? What resources can the administrator rely upon? What techniques can the administrator rely upon? Because ultimately, again, like Joe says, that principal is the lead learner in their building. So again, if you're going to be the evaluator, then it's not okay to me, and I tell my principals all the time, do not joke with me that you can't send an attachment. You don't know how to send, you don't know how to turn on your computer, you don't know how to do something. Because if you're evaluating teachers on their use of technology and you don't know how to do those things and you joke about those things, then teachers, they don't want to hear when it comes to evaluation time that you're saying, well, they could be better with technology. Well, you could be better with technology. So we want our administrators, and I want principals to feel like they can be comfortable with technology in their role, and they can use technology similarly to how teachers are using it as well. So that whole administrator piece has been a really big push and a really big passion for me in trying to figure out how can we better meet the needs of administrators in the buildings, because ultimately that translates to teachers teaching and learning better, I think.
So as soon as Tom DeBoer comes in the room, if he comes in, we'll have to switch. So we'll make that cut when he comes, because he'll do the 5-minute announcement of what's coming up tomorrow for Connected Educating Month. But until he does, we'll keep going. So, Stephen, how did I move into your Western North Carolina territory without connecting with you about it? Do you know I'm here?
I did know that you're over there in Black Mountain. I've heard some rumblings that you've got some pretty cool things going on in Black Mountain. Actually, my parents live in Asheville, and my sister is a freshman in high school just outside Asheville in a little town called Candler. So you're just probably 90 minutes from me.
Oh my gosh, we got to get together. Yeah, so I'm at this self-organized learning environment, Sugato-Mitra-styled higher ed space, and we have a lot of fun to talk about. We're going to make that happen. So where are you actually?
I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, so I'm just about an hour north of Charlotte and about 90 minutes west of Raleigh.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to get myself there somehow. Okay, why the bow ties?
So it started with it actually started with socks. So several years ago, I visited the Promethean headquarters outside of Atlanta in Alpharetta, Georgia, and I was talking to the CEO, and somehow we got talking about Ron Clark. Well, Ron Clark's big deal is he wears crazy socks, and I said, oh, that would be something cool. I'd love a crazy pair of socks. I wouldn't even know where to find them. Well, a couple months later, for Christmas that year, the CEO of Promethean sent me a pair of Clemson orange socks. And so it kind of became my trademark. I would present these orange socks. Well, then I started finding other crazy socks. So socks with dinosaurs, socks with beer mug. I've got socks for everything. Well, then it just kind of branched out into, well, let me do something else crazy. So nobody was doing bow ties, so then I started doing bow ties. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just one of those things that it annoys the heck out of my wife, because I put things in color combinations together that probably normal people don't put together. But it's just, I don't know, it's just something that I've just kind of started doing.
I love it. Okay, so we're doing the School Leadership Summit again this year, thanks to TCAL. How do we make it bigger and better? What's one piece of advice you'd give us?
It was already pretty awesome. I mean, the conversations that we're having there, I think one of the things that it's just spreading that message further and wider. NASSP and NAESSP, the elementary version of the secondary, they're really coming on board with the whole idea of this social learning and online learning, and so if it's something dedicated to administrators, I mean, I know they would definitely be involved. But I think it's understanding that all of us too, even though we may not be administrators, it could be something that, hey, we pass along to our administrator. If you've got that, one of the biggest complaints I hear is, oh, I'm connected, but my principal wants nothing to do with it. My assistant principal, my curriculum coordinator doesn't want anything to do with it. And I think it's just that, hey, here's, even if it's the recorded session afterwards, I think those of us who are connected, who are not administrators, who are not in that role, still could be share on the archive. Go back to, I still go back and look at some of the things in the archive. We use some of that in our administrator, in this administrator PD series that we're doing. I use some of the things from there. I think if you rely on just trying to tell the administrators, here's this wonderful conference, this online conference you should attend, the message may not go much further than them. But if all of us go back and we tell that administrator in the building who, it might pique their interest a little bit. It might be, you might tell a friend who has a friend who's an administrator. The more of us who are sharing about these things, even though we may not be in that role, the better. The Library 2.0 conference that just happened, I wrote about that on my blog, that it was more than just for librarians. I mean, all of us have something we can learn from the media coordinator community. All of us have, those folks who are in that community are so fascinating and so smart and so funny. And why shouldn't we be learning from them and taking part in that? So it's while it may just say Library 2.0, it really could be for anybody. So that was something I wanted to share with everybody. The STEM, hey, you may not teach a science or technology or math course, but why couldn't you as an English teacher see what's happening there and learn from that as well? So I think it's just promoting that amongst all of our circles, having all of us out there and learning and sharing and growing together.
But one of the misperceptions of the Global Education Conference has always been that it sounds like it's a global conference on education and not a conference on global education. And I've been thinking a lot lately, and Lucy, I'm interested in your take on this as well. Are we ready for a really massive worldwide conference on learning and technology? I mean, are we at a place where we could actually pull something huge off?
I think there needs to become a better platform, in all honesty, for it. I think that the hurdles that people have to jump into, even just like downloading, whatever, Java for Blackboard Collaborate can be an issue and a barrier. It's not completely seamless yet. I think Google Hangouts might have the best chance of that, but there needs to be a way of mass creating those or pulling them all together really easily. So I don't know. I think that there needs to be, I don't know what it is. I honestly don't. I think Connected Educator Month is a really great start to all this because it's saying, I think part of the problem has been that there's not been a legitimization of the kind of going to the topic for tonight, of informal learning. And the problem is that people think that teachers need to be fixed, that they're broken, and so there's this half empty, half full kind of thing going on. So PD is looked at as something that it's done to correct, or done because there's somebody defined for this for me recently. It was great, the word they use, a deficit outlook, kind of, that everybody's deficient. And we also do that with kids a lot of the time, you're deficient, so if we just work you harder, faster, better, then that will improve. But we're completely neglecting, with adults and kids, what motivates them, what their passions are, that they might actually pursue an interest on their own, and that should be applauded and celebrated. And it's a superiority thing, you know, like I'm the person that knows everything, and you need to listen to me. And so anyway, I wish that there was more research into informal learning in adults and personal learning networks, and that kind of gave more of a legitimacy to it, so that other people might be drawn into it. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but.
Stephen, what's your take? Are we ready for a much bigger event?
So this idea of Connected Educators Month is great. I mean, you've got a lot of different organizations focusing in on, you know, this idea of and the importance of being connected. Where I want to go now is, so it's April, what are we doing? How are we still having on those conversations? And I think these conferences like Global Ed and what just happened with the Reform Symposium and all of these events, even there's a virtual Ed Camp this weekend. I mean, so this whole idea of Ed Camps has really taken off. Now this weekend there's Ed Camp Online, which anybody can attend from anywhere. I mean, it's these sustaining events that we're going to need. It's these sustaining things that we're going to need to have to go forward. I mean, what I really love about the Global Education Conference is that it's about global learning, and it's about and that's the cool thing about the WISE conference in Qatar. Is you really get a sense of in the U.S. you think in terms of education in a U.S. point of view, and maybe that's you know, specific to every country. They think of it in just their point of view. You go to WISE or you go to the Global Education Conference, you see these things from a real global perspective, and you really get a sense that there are some really, really awesome things happening, and that there are so much that we still have yet to learn about and build upon. They're really, I think we're right on the cusp of doing something really great, and we can use Connected Educator Month as a platform and to build momentum. I just want to make sure that when November 1 happens, that even though it may not officially be Connected Educator Month, we're still maintaining these things. Why couldn't we be doing the Connected Educators book clubs every month? Why couldn't we be doing those things and still having this big platform? I mean, I know there are people who do those things, but they just do it on a smaller scale. Well, that's one of the things that I want to kind of push towards is how are we going to make sure that we sustain the momentum that we're having? Because I 3 emails a day I get on here are all the events that are happening for Connected Educator Month. What if you got that every single day? What if there was a way to curate all of those great things that are happening every single day, and every day you got the Connected Educator email or you got the Connected Educator update that said, hey, it's Tuesday, here's everything that's happened on Tuesday, or it's Saturday, don't forget, at noon you can hang out with the Classroom 2.0 show, or here's this conference that's happening, or here's this Ed Camp that's happening. What if there was a way to make sure that you had that information every day in one place that was easily accessible? I think that's how we begin to shift those conversations and think bigger than right now.
Sorry, I lost the mic there. Great ideas. Okay, so I want to give each of you a chance to kind of drill down on something that you're thinking about right now that's sort of top of mind for you, something that's really engaging your excess cycles, something that you're sort of passionate about. That feel free to say that you've already started to talk about it, and we'll just keep the conversation going from where you left off. But Lucy, is there something that you're playing with right now that you'd want to share with us?
Gosh, lots of different things I'm working on right now. I just got done doing a tech audit for a school that's looking to kick things up a notch. And that's been a really interesting process to help the school in their particular context figure out where they need to go. So it's not about what I think is best and what I would do, but what fits this particular culture. So that's been an interesting shift in my thinking. And that also goes with, I've been doing a couple coaching things, one an Android pilot here in Chicago Public Schools and one in District 230, which is a big high school district outside Chicago. And one is an Android tablet deployment for fifth graders going home. They get to take the tablets home, which is exciting. They have connectivity with it, which is even more exciting. And the other one is teachers who are trying out Chromebooks for the semester, and then they'll switch to iPads in January. And I think trying to figure out how I best address their needs and what's going to be helpful to them, and where we start and build to something more sophisticated or more pushing their thinking, that's been kind of interesting. So I think the starting point for them has been, workflow. How do we figure things out that way? So it's not necessarily anything radical, but trying to figure out on some of the practical things. So that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately. And then the other thing that's occurred to me too, I'm starting to kind of get more ready for the Global Ed Conference. And I don't know if you saw Ed's email, Steve, but look at your email. And also go look at our site, because I just changed the logos last night. I think the site looks beautiful. There's a new, the banner needs to be adjusted a little bit, but it looks really good. Anyway, and with a global thing, I'm thinking a lot about how to articulate my vision and my why I believe it's important. And the thing that's been occurring to me lately, it's not about globalization anymore. People keep saying, well, we have to be globally competitive, and I'm really kind of tired of that argument. I think it's old, it's trite, and it's too U.S.-centric. And I don't know if you saw the news today about how the United States is being accused of spying through NSA to our allies. Our perception in the world is a little clouded right now. I think, especially after all the craziness that went on with, a couple of weeks ago, and then this. And so anyway, I'm really concerned about what our intentions are for encouraging global connectedness. And I think it's more important than ever, and I also am thinking a lot about why it's not valued more by people. So that's a lot to chew on.
So see, we've never made this connection, but we should read The Medici Effect together. I had Franz Johansson, the author, on to talk about his newer book called The Click Moment. But in The Medici Effect, it's basically the case for the core value of diversity and people of different backgrounds and different ideas. He might be a great keynote, too.
Let's do it. I'd be up for it. And that's the other thing, too, that has also been occurring to me. I need to do more reading and thinking and reflecting and just like staring out into space about all this stuff in general. I need more time to think. And I've been cutting back on some of the things I've been doing just so that I can have some balance with that. I think it's really important, and it's really easy to lose sight of that. And I'm sure you feel that way right now with Connected Educators Month, that you've been up more than you could do.
I do feel that way, but part of the reason I came to Black Mountain was that they agreed to let me bring people here for special sort of deep dives. And Peggy probably knows this story, but there were several really significant education thinkers in the 70s who I think lived together for over a year. John Holt, Ivan Illich, and several others. And I want to kind of recreate that environment for coming and spending 4 or 5 days just really thinking. So that's an invitation. We'll follow up on that. Call me here. No, we're going to skip the messy aspects of that. Very cool. I'll follow up on Franz Johansson as well, because I think that would be really fun. And it seems to me that Stephen might not be a bad guy to ask about some of the text tech implementations, but I'll leave that to the two of you to do offline. Stephen, what's top of your mind?
So one of the things that we're doing in our district is bring your own device. And so when I tell that to people, they say, oh, well, you haven't done that yet? You haven't, well, what's taking you so long? And so for me, bring your own device is not about technology. And if you look at some examples of technology rollouts across the country, there are some pretty great examples of poor planning. So in the district right next door to me is one of the most famous implementation failures that you can see in these Amplify tablets. So Guilford County Schools is right next door. They rolled out 21,000 Amplify tablets to their kids, and now they've pulled them all back because there have been some issues. And you know, it may or may not be the hardware that's the problem. That may be a small piece of the puzzle. So, you know, you look at LA Unified and the problems they had with their iPads, and granted, these are all district-provided technologies. For me, anytime that we're looking at large-scale, any kind of technology implementation, we need to do it in a very methodical way. And so with Bring Your Own Device, it's been something that we've been planning for a long time, and we actually don't call it Bring Your Own Device. So we call it Mobile Learning Communities. So we use the acronym MLC. So with our MLC project, it actually started 2 years ago with planning a pilot using some Race to the Top dollars. We put one-to-one classrooms at every level in our district. So we had some elementary, we had some middle, we had some high. We had some full tablet implementations, we had some all laptop implementations. And it really wasn't about the device. What it was more for us and for my staff was we needed to figure out what kind of support do we need to give these teachers? What kind of professional development do we need to provide for these teachers? The technology, we can teach the teachers all day long how to do technology. We can teach the teachers what apps to buy. We can teach the teachers how to integrate technology. We're really, really good at that. But what we don't have and what we were lacking at the time was the best way to teach teachers when kids have access to information that's more than you know, they might have more access to information than the teacher does, or when the teacher's not the smartest person in the room, what does that teaching need to look like? So for 2 years we ran this pilot, and we looked at what does our professional development need to look like, what needs to happen in those classrooms. And so now this past summer we trained 300 teachers on this authentic learning process, which for us we use kind of a blend of problem-based learning and project-based learning, and really what we've called it is we've called it developing POLs, or developing we call it the process of learning. So it's really all BYOD or even one-to-one is about sound pedagogy. It's not about what device you have. It's not about iPads versus laptops or versus Android. It's about pedagogy. It's about how the teacher teaches with the tools that they have and using those tools the most appropriate way. And our teachers have had a hard time with that. Some of them expected when they came to this training that we were going to teach them everything they needed to know about teaching in a BYOD classroom or a one-to-one classroom. And what we didn't talk about the technology. We talked about that process of learning. So for me, kind of the validation moment for us was when our instructional services department recently worked on a huge grant, a Race to the Top local grant, a district grant, and the model that they used was the model that was created by our instructional technology staff, in that we want to train more teachers on this process, on this authentic learning process. And so scaling that out and figuring out if a district embraces this idea of authentic learning, what kinds of things can come out of that? If you're teaching kids to solve problems instead of looking for solutions to one solution to one problem, if you're teaching them how to find multiple solutions to the same problem and allowing them to come up with their own solutions to problems, what kinds of things can we do? And so it's really, that's kind of our big push now in helping teachers figure out what does that authentic learning look like. We're continuing to do tech integration. We're continuing to do those things about teaching teachers how to integrate, but we're really trying to get them focused on their pedagogy. For me, instructional technology is not about technology, it's about pedagogy. That my job is to make sure that I equip teachers with the strongest pedagogy possible and teach them how to do it and teach them how to teach in an effective way. It's not teaching them how to use their Promethean board. It's teaching them why when they use their Promethean board they should be using it, or why they shouldn't be using it when they want to. So that's been kind of a big focus for myself for this year. And then how do I scale that? How do I kind of, begin to have those conversations outside of my district and moving those conversations forward with others?
Okay, I love some of the things you said. And the last thing you said I think was phenomenally profound, which is how do you help them to have those same conversations, right? I mean, what I'm hearing you say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is that the process is critical, not just sort of mandating the procedure.
Yeah, exactly. It's how kids are getting to those solutions. Or how teachers are presenting the ways to let kids find the right answers or even the wrong answers. To me, it's about when kids come to school, it seems like we leave authenticity at the door. That kids have a hard time relating to the content that we're teaching them, that you've got these really smart people who create these standards, that these are all the things that kids have to know. And so for a long time, teachers have been teaching it in a very benign way, and that it was just this expectation. You're the learner, I'm the teacher, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about fractions. And kids don't relate to fractions. Kids relate to their world. And so why can't tech integration be that way? Or why can't when we do BYOD, that's the way it should be? Or why isn't when we put interactive whiteboards in the classroom, how are we creating those moments of authenticity to get kids connected? Kids have to figure out, and we really have to show them, this is why this is important. You have to learn how to do decimals because of this. And the way that you do that is providing them a real solution. My big hang up on problem-based learning is that it sometimes claims to be authentic, but having a kid pretend to be a paleontologist to solve a science lesson about dinosaurs isn't sometimes authentic to kids. I've got kids in my district who don't know or have never seen dinosaur fossils or have never had that experience. Rather, if you give them something from their community that they can relate to, that has that authenticity to them, that's what we're trying to teach teachers how to do. Technology is just a vehicle to get them there a little quicker and a little easier.
Okay, I made two other connections. One is Kevin Kelly's book, What Technology Wants. He has this sort of brilliant description of how the Amish study technology and then decide how to bring it into their culture that I think you would really love, just from the standpoint of kind of another model of thinking about, the technology being secondary, in that particular case, to a religious community or a certain kind of community, but the study in advance and then the determination of how to appropriately bring it in. The other is this whole thing about MOOCs, right? So what I think has happened, for all my misgivings about the XMOOCs, I think part of what they've done is they've helped universities realize they weren't doing any teaching about teaching, right? Their faculty were never getting any kind of professional development about how to teach well. It wasn't part of the university model. And with the MOOCs, they've sort of had to really think about the actual pedagogy. And it seems to me like the technology you're describing and the process is sort of similarly doing the same thing. You're in a very healthy way focusing on, okay, what does this require us to learn about pedagogy?
To me, that's what our conversations need to be about. I know we've done the old cliches about, oh, we never had pencil integration class, we never had overhead integration class. Why are we doing laptop integration? It's all, to me, it's about pedagogy. It really, that's the fundamental. I mean, that's why I have a hang up on the flipped classroom, is because the conversation hasn't been about pedagogy. It's been about how do you take what you've been doing in the classroom, record it, and then make it accessible to all kids. To me, bad pedagogy is bad pedagogy, whether it's in class in front of students or on video in front of students. And so we've got to talk about how are we actually teaching, and how are we creating those authentic learning environments for kids, and how do we focus in on their process of learning? How do we make sure and ensure that the kids are moving along with their learning, and maybe they do fail. Maybe you let them go far enough to get an answer that may not be the right one, and then how do you help them figure that out, and how do you turn it around and move them in another direction? So, to me, it's all about that process and that pedagogy piece that I think is where, at least in our district, that's where I want to have those serious and deep conversations.
I want to ask one more question of the two of you that's really been on my mind the last few days. So when Will Richardson came into the cafe, he said, what we're experiencing is new. These connecting technologies bring something so new that we're having to think in very new ways about teaching and learning. What Jim Benign yesterday from HP said was equally compelling to me. He said, this is really about understanding how teachers impact students, and the technology is secondary to that. We need to be figuring out the impact and the relationship between the teacher and the student, and then how the technology magnifies what things the technology can magnify and do well. How do we think about those two? Are they different? Are they just different ways of looking at something? Where do either of you land? Let's start with you, Lucy.
Can you repeat that again for me? I'm sorry.
No, all of that I don't think I can. Okay, so Will Richardson said the technology. Okay, the technology, the connecting is new, so it requires new thinking about teaching and learning. Jim Benign says teaching and learning is about one person impacting another person, and the technology can amplify aspects of that. Are those different messages? Are they just different ways of looking at things, or where do you fall?
I think it's different ways of looking at it. Do I think this is new? I think for the most part, people aren't using it in new ways necessarily. Like I was talking about workflow earlier. It's like the SAMR model. It's doing something that would be on the substitution or augmentation level of things. So I don't know that I would generalize and say this is so new that people don't get it. But I think there's just different ways of looking at it. I'm sorry, I'm not being very articulate. Maybe Steve can be more insightful.
Okay, Steve, you got 2 minutes.
So I think Will is really smart. I mean, Will is somebody who I would just sit into a room and just listen, talk. He could read the telephone book and I would just be content. But I mean, I don't know that this is necessarily new. I think we're doing it in a new way. And I just had this conversation just right before we came on. We've been connecting forever. I mean, educators have been going to conferences or meeting each other and connecting forever. We just have a new way of doing that. The technology just makes it easier. It removes the barrier of distance in order for us to connect. I mean, think about just this event right now of us being able to have a really meaningful to me conversation and being able to learn from everybody here. I just think I don't know that they're necessarily saying anything different from each other. I just think it's a different way of looking at it. We definitely are teaching and learning in a really cool time. And I just think more people need to recognize the power and the potential that is out there, that we can really do some incredible things if we just remove some of our perceptions of how teaching and learning could be and just try it. If it doesn't work, well, you learned one way that didn't work. That's that Edison quote about, oh, I didn't fail. I just learned 100-something ways that it didn't work. it's the same thing with teachings. Okay, so it didn't work. Let's try a different way. And that instills, critical thinking and this idea of that we can really do anything we put our minds to, and if we get it wrong, no big deal. We'll just figure out another way to do it.
Okay.
I think,
go ahead, Lucy.
Just to add on to it, I think the great barrier right now is, I think the great barrier is that we're not really allowing for true innovation to happen. I think things are much more controlled in schools, and people are much more careful. So I think in a lot of districts, maybe not in Stevens, but I still don't think that there's a lot of latitude for figuring this out. And, I haven't seen, and we could have a whole other discussion about innovation in general around education, and I haven't seen anything that's really kind of like sparked me and gotten me really excited that this is really different. And just to give you an example of something I did hear that was different, I read recently, this is not education, but I like this idea. You're going to be able to do be able to invest in crowd-funded projects now according to the SEC. They're piloting this or they're exploring this. So like a Kickstarter project you could invest in, for instance, and it's a new thing that they're looking at to kind of bolster innovation in general, which I think is brilliant. Why not? I mean, that just seems like a very simple mechanism that you could do to change things up. I think things are still pretty locked down because of high-stakes testing for us to really, really explore the potential of what about leveraging technology to enhance learning could do. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, we're going to stop there. Really, not because I don't want to keep the conversation going, but just as a courtesy to the two of you to let you get on with your lives. Thank you so much. Lucy, Stephen, Peggy, you're all going to receive invitations to come to Black Mountain. I hope you will, and I hope to spend some days here drilling down with me on exactly these kinds of things. Can't wait to see if that's possible. Thank you both. Have a great night. Stephen, Winston-Salem, here I come.
We'll have you anytime.
Okay. Hey, travel safely. Lucy, I'm sure I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here. Have a good night.